Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukat.
And a very good evening to you and a warm welcome to Newsline Live. Now then, with everybody thinking about and talking about and feeling the economy, what better time indeed to talk about economy? Not about the problems, because I think from north to south, from the hills to the east to the west, everybody in Sri Lanka knows that something is amiss with the economy. To discuss what the potential future lies to up the economy and to get going again, we've got with us here Dr. Shanuka Senarath, who is of course a attorney at law and a senior lecturer at the Department of Economics from the University of Colombo. Very good evening to you and welcome to Newsline Live, Doctor.
Very good evening, Faraz.
Thank you very much for coming in. Obviously, we need to have a sound, planned economy. We need the planning now more than ever before, rather than just sort of going from, in an almost muddle-headed fashion, from one to another. Would you agree with me that we need proper planning?
Of course, that is, I believe, it's a long overdue. So something we ought to have, and something should have done decades ago. We are almost lacking a proper mechanism, as in proper policy and a proper framework for the economy. So that, I believe, something we are suffering over the last few decades, since independence rather.
May I ask Dr. Shanuka, what do you teach at the university?
Well, I do teach a lot. I mean, I basically teach macroeconomic subjects, as in subjects related to macroeconomy. Basically, my specialization is on financial regulation. So I teach about financial markets, money markets, capital markets.
And what would you say, even if you were to hazard a guess, what would you say is the contribution to the GDP from that aspect of our economy?
If you can,
like say the financial markets. Now you teach financial markets. From financial services, auxiliary financial services, and all that. What component of our GDP?
Well, the GDP is basically classified into three segments: the agriculture sector, service sector, and the industrial sector. So all the financial services, including banking, insurance, everything comes under services. So when an economy develops, the model is that the comparative contribution from the financial sector, as in the service sector rather, should go up, while the industry may remain stable for a while, and the contribution of the agriculture sector goes down. I mean, it's not in numbers though, comparatively, the contribution, the percentage contribution the service sector should go up when an economy is developing. That is the accepted norm.
And it has been often stated that the aspiration of our government is to take Sri Lanka to traverse towards a $12,000 per capita GDP. How possible is that? What do we have to do to get to that 12,000?
Well, we all can have big wish lists, but there's a lot to do if we are trying to go towards that expected level. We have to focus on the economy as a whole. As in, if you would agree with me, if I ask you, do we have a proper industrial policy for this country? Do we have an agricultural policy for this country? Do we have any policy for this country? Disregard of the government in power, the sad truth is we don't. If I could remember, starting from as late as in 1990s, we had some sort of industrial policy where we started government factories with the intention of industrializing the country in the next decade.
So this is like, for example, under President Ranasinghe Premadasa.
Under President Ranasinghe Premadasa, if I could remember correctly, the minister in charge was by then Mr. Lalitha Tulatmudali. So by then the policy was to make Sri Lanka a semi-industrial country in the next decade. But in my point of view, from there onwards, we never had a proper policy to industrialize this country or to have any sort of economic enhancement. We never had a proper stable policy from there onwards.
We're in conversation with Dr. Shanuka Senarath from the University of Colombo, who's senior lecturer of economics there. We're having difficulties, technical difficulties, putting up the super on the screen, which tells you who you're watching tonight, which of course is Dr. Shanuka Senarath. From time to time, the server doesn't always give up, but today it did. All right, so bear with us, please. Now then, Dr. Shanuka, so you're saying that Sri Lanka needs a real industrialization policy.
We need policies in every aspect of the society, not just economics. Economics is just one aspect. So just having, what I meant earlier as well, having a big wish list wouldn't work. We need to do a proper analysis of the economy. As
a teacher, as a professor, and lecturing these your students, are you sometimes frustrated because you're talking theory in the full knowledge that out there our legislators haven't made any plans? They seem to be going from day to day, hand to mouth almost, and parliamentary time is a complete, apparently to us, a waste of time because there is no plan. For Sri Lanka, forever and a day is in the same abyss of despair.
That is the harsh truth.
Are you frustrated as a lecturer in these matters?
I would say I'm frustrated as a citizen of this country.
Right.
So I wouldn't put the blame on any government, as in this government or the previous government or the previous government. It's all the successive governments from time to time. I do not see any proper plan or a policy rather than big wish lists which are coming and going during the elections. Other than that, what do we have?
When you look at it from an economic point of view, how possible is it to transform ourselves from this sort of chemical-based fertilizer situation to a all-organic agro production?
Well, very good question and very tricky question also. Well, it's fine. It is something that is possible, but I would not say it's something that is 100% possible, but that is something you cannot do overnight. So that needs time. So take, for example, Bhutan. They had their fertilizer policies, they had their green policies, all the policies which were implemented with proper mechanisms which runs for over decades to come up with good possible implementable solutions. So overnight, over 1 week, we cannot go from chemical-based fertilizer to natural fertilizers.
Do you sort of reckon in your most horrible dreams or nightmares even that this move towards organic farming, organic fertilizer and so on is a canard to hide the fact that we are having significant difficulties with foreign exchange?
I'm pretty sure we don't have to be ashamed of accepting the fact that we are running out of foreign exchange, foreign currencies. That is nothing to hide though. I believe like not importing fertilizers could be a means of saving most precious foreign currencies. But if I can take one more minute about it, this may have grievous repercussions. For example, but I'll give you just one example. For the moment, if we talk about our exports, we have a comparative advantage on tea export. Now what happens if the tea production of this country goes down and we lose the hold in the international market? There are 1,001 countries staying, looking, waiting for grabbing the market portion. So we have the danger of losing whatever the agriculture-based exports we are having at the moment. So we have a number of things to look at before jumping into solutions.
And thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your messages, which is coming through on SMS. The number, of course, unfortunately, I can't put it on the screen because of some technical difficulties, but The number by SMS is 0772 300 305. And there's several messages already. Today, Newsline, your guest is knowledgeable. It amazes me. You have so many great people on the show. Why are they not entering politics and make the difference if they really love this country? Over to you, Dr. Shanuka Senarath.
Okay. Why am I not going into politics?
Yeah.
Because my mother and wife wouldn't want me to. I
Right.
would put it that way.
Okay.
I don't think a person like me or
Why is that? Why do they not want you to go into politics? Is it because politics is now leaves a sour taste in people's minds and in their mouths?
politics rather has become a gamble more than a profession in these days. Going into politics, I wonder whether I would be able to implement my plans or implement my knowledge or to make my contribution to the country as a member of the parliament in my worst nightmare. If I go to the parliament, I wonder whether I would be able to make my contribution. I don't know. This should be the way that most of the intellectuals in this country are feeling. We would love to, but I wonder whether we would have any.
But if all of you think the way you are doing, which to me appears to be in the negative side, but if everyone does that, then of course all of us here in Sri Lanka are doomed. We need people who are committed to the betterment of our country, who are committed to an equal lifestyle for everybody in this country, whether you live in the north, south, up in the hills, on the east or the west coast. So you need to make a start. People, like-minded people, ought to make a start, because quite frankly, whenever I speak to the public, when I'm traveling about and I'm talking and inquiring after things, you know, I can't find people now in the same numbers who appeared to have voted President Gotabaya in, for example. And I'm wondering to myself, really, did he win? Because half these people I talk to now, they deny all knowledge of voting for this side, which to me is a bit sad. But then it's not surprising, because people are genuinely frustrated, aren't they?
I agree with you. People are, and people will be genuinely frustrated from time to time. For every election, from my knowledge, starting from 1990s, we vote with a lot of hopes and end up with what you said. Nobody has finally voted the existing government after a few months.
Well, it's now time for a little peek at the headlines from Newsfirst's primetime news team. But when we come back, we'll be asking Dr. Senarath, indeed, as to what 3 items would he suggest we implement so that we can get our GDP, per capita GDP, going up again. We'll see you on the other side of the break.
Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
Welcome back to Newsline Live. I'm in conversation this evening with Dr. Shanuka Senarath, who's of course a senior lecturer at the Department of Economics, University of Colombo. I was going to ask you this question. I will ask you, as an economist, how do you suggest that we move the GDP up? Could you give me 3 main points, 3 priority items as an economist, in your opinion?
Well, again, as I told you, now the GDP, what we have here is a general classification of how it's been calculated. But what I would say, first, we have to focus on essential needs, say things like education. So where we lose a lot of foreign currencies due to the fact that a lot of young people leave the country. I mean, nothing to hide that a lot of young people leave the country once they are done with O-levels or A-levels.
Yeah.
So one thing we can do is if we can enhance our education sector, of course with much needed private universities in the proper mechanism, would enhance not just the GDP, it would enhance the future of this country as well.
Currently, the records I'm looking at 2019, education accounted for approximately 3.36 billion.
Yep.
Would you like to see this going up by what sort of, how much would you like to, in terms of percentage, 10%, 30%, what?
Well, education, the contribution, it depends on what the other items would be. When an economy grows, the comparative, actually what happens is the actual numbers are going up, absolute numbers are going up. So the percentages would be the same, more or less the same, because all the other items are going up as
So
well.
education is one item. What are the other two items?
I would say we should focus on manufacturing before, like, with manufacturing we need to have services like financial services, banking, insurance, financial intermediary services, especially things related to banking and finance is an urgent must, which should facilitate manufacturing as well.
So you're almost hankering after President Premadas's policy of, the policy that he introduced, which is still working in our favor, the 300 textile factories program.
That program by then was a very good move, but we haven't moved an inch from there. So by now, like what Mr. Atulath Modi said when it was implemented, if I could remember, to make Sri Lanka a semi-industrial country in a decade. So we do have the garment factories, but we still do have the garment factories. We haven't gone anywhere from there. We haven't.
But it has produced some startling names.
It did.
And they are world, they are world players.
We should have done more, as in.
But not just the two. I don't want to mention the names because I'll get into trouble with legal and marketing. But apart from the two top names, we know who they are, and they are world class. So you bemoan the fact that we don't have any more big brands?
We should have big more brands. I mean, that's what I told you. Now, textile manufacturing is a success. So we should have implemented other such policies for other industries as well. If we did, we should have such brands in other things as well.
Both these brands that I'm talking about, I think we all know they employ thousands of people. They bring billions of
foreign dollars to Sri Lanka.
Into Sri Lanka, and they have also expanded in the region
elsewhere as well,
where they are equally big players. So it's all kudos to them. But so you say manufacturing, education, and third one, services?
Services. So if you're asking for three, of course, all these items are critically important.
Of course.
I mean,
I'll talk about three like priority items.
That means those would lay the foundation for a prosperous economy in future.
And let me ask you this question. Let's see if we can get to grips with this. How many students in one class that you lecture?
It depends. Special course units we have around 80. 80. Economic special degrees. Other courses may range from general degrees from 100 to 150. Some courses from 10 to 20.
And what stresses or challenges would you face if you wanted to double the number of your students?
Well, obviously the infrastructure, we do not have big facilities. We do have, but to double the numbers, we can double the numbers, but the issue would be whether we can facilitate their needs and whether we can give them a proper quality education.
So we need more investment into that?
Well, I would, yes and no, depends on how we implement that. We, like in foreign universities, we have parallel batches, like afternoon classes, online classes, students enrolled online. Those would work really well.
And what did we do as an economist, looking down as an economist into this country, what do you think we've done wrong? Our per capita GDP is $4,000, hovering, just gone down a little bit, but Singapore is around 60,000. What's wrong?
Well, I would say, where did we go right? Starting from the beginning, since independence. We never made any big attempt. We never made any proper approach to develop our economy. We never wanted to implement proper institutions, economic institutions, or rather inclusive institutions, which would make the economy grow. You don't have to do much to make an economy grow. All you have to do is have the proper framework, law and order, and the proper institutions.
And commitment.
Commitment, as in modern days, the governments wouldn't involve much in the economy. They would lay the foundation, protect the law and order, have the proper institutions.
And get the private sector to get on with it.
Exactly. Then it would grow.
So government, what you're saying is government has no business being in business.
Well, again, yes and no. Government, I believe, should limit its business in the economy. They would rather implement the proper foundation and the structure. That would do. Because the government can always intervene, like in Asian countries they do mostly. That would be fine. But
that's only to get the boat onto the water.
That's right.
And let it get on.
Exactly. Have the proper foundation, have the law and order, I would say, have the proper infrastructure, keep the stability, economic stability, the economy would grow.
If we look a little bit further than our region, but if we look, let's say, to Seoul in South Korea, or South Korea as a whole, you'll find so many universities, so many institutes of higher education. They seem to have invested in education, and education. And it seems to be working.
It will. It does. Education is, I would say, the foundation of everything. Look at Australia, look at New Zealand. What's their top priority, top business in earning foreign income? Education.
Out of the blue,
and education.
Out of the blue, if I say to you, how much would it cost to put up another faculty?
Depends on how you want to have the faculty.
Well, let's say low cost, but another faculty.
Faculty for economics.
Yes, let's say faculty for economics.
To cater how many students?
Okay, put it another way. If I was to say to you, or if the government said to you, look, you've got 12 billion rupees, what can you do? What kind of facilities can you do? How many faculties can you put up?
Well, that is a bit tricky question for me, rather, because I'm not a businessman.
No.
Well, money, it's not actually money. We do have all the infrastructure, as in what matters is for the buildings, actually, if it comes to a humanities faculty. But we need to hire the best people. That's where the cost comes.
So it's an investment in, an investment in education, in training.
Exactly.
That 12 billion amount was not a secret, and most people who watch Newsline, regular watchers of Newsline, will realize, of course, that I'm mentioning none other than that bad word from the past, the central bank bond scam. There's 12 billion rupees locked up with the central bank, belonging to one of the primary suspects of this whole sad scam. And I was wondering, if they recovered the 12 billion, which they have, all they need to do is release it into the system, and they can invest it in education. That's what I was trying to get at.
True. The central bank bond scam, if it happened, is just one thing that probably must have come from that should be the tip of the iceberg. How much money do we lose every year? I'll give you one example.
Corruption.
Well, we'll forget about corruption. We'll talk about wastage.
Yeah.
Do you know how much money we lose in a day for petrol wastage only? I'm not talking about usage. I'm talking about wastage. Wastage due to traffic congestion. How much? What is the value? 1 billion rupees per day just for petrol wastage in this country due to traffic jam. 80% comes from Colombo, 20% from rest of the country. Imagine how much we are losing a year. Just wastage, petrol. What else do we have? What sort of wastage do we have in this country? So you can assume the amounts.
So wastage is another thing we need to look at. So just as we wrap up today, Dr. Senarath, the bottom line is that there is no quick fix. Or is the quick fix immediate cut down on wastage, maybe on corruption, to plug the leaks? Would that be right?
Well, that would be just one part of the picture. That would be one part of the solution. Cutting down wastage, controlling corruption are urgent musts, but they are not sufficient. They are necessary, but they are not sufficient. We need to have a proper infrastructure, as in proper set of institutions. We call it inclusive institutions, which makes the economy grow, which have proven to be economic friendly and which would bring prosperity.
Perhaps a rapid answer to this one, because we're coming close to the end. Isn't the government's policy one of simply depending on China to make good on any revenue shortfall on conditions determined by China?
Well, I don't think we have much of an option, because wonder how many countries, how many institutions are happy to lend us now. So
we have no choice other than to lean on China?
We have very little choices.
Why is that? Is that because of our what?
Well, it's like this. If you are short of funds, who would lend you? Now, if
the
we
people
go to
who have money.
Yeah, well, when we are going for money, if we are going for loans, like what we do is we issue bonds. Now, bonds issued by the Sri Lankan government would be wouldn't be that attractive in the international capital market.
Indeed.
So we may always have to go for bilateral agreements to make funds. That's how we end up with China, in my point of view.
Anybody who is watching this program in the hope that you'll be able to give them, disclose some magic formula for a quick fix is obviously going to be left disappointed. But perhaps I can wrap this up by saying that we need to be aware that successive governments have indulged in what we call a finger in the pie, also known as corruption, stealing basically. And you know, just because you're stealing from the state doesn't make it any sweeter. It's actually disgusting, because it is the people's monies that we're talking about. And on that note, I'd like to thank you, Dr. Shanuka Senarath, for being on this program.
Thank you so much.
We've much enjoyed your thoughts, and we've much enjoyed your company. Thank you very much. And as we leave you tonight to the primetime news from News First, all I can say is have a great evening, take care, and God bless you.